Welcome to the Speed and Nguyen's Deep Dive podcast. Today we're plunging into a really fascinating analysis of the film Civil War. And this isn't just about, watching a movie. It's about understanding how it portrays war journalism, particularly the surprising kind of complex role of altruism within that incredibly dangerous world. You sent us some amazing sources, everything from a detailed academic study, a semiotic analysis, to a whole stack of critical film reviews. Our mission today is to unpack the most compelling insights from all that. We want to help you understand not just what this film shows, but what it actually means for the very challenging world of reporting from conflict zones.
That's right. Yeah, our main guide today is that semiotic analysis. It's from Journal Spectrum Communicasi. The title is Altruism in War Journalism, a semiotic analysis of the film Civil War by Alfiancia Salim. It's really foundational for understanding the film's deeper messages. It looks beyond the surface, tries to uncover how the film uses symbols and signs to convey some pretty profound truths. And we're definitely not stopping there. We've also pulled insights from lots of different film reviews, publications like Paste Magazine, Film Colossus, Roger Ebert, Screen Rant, BFI, The Review, and Politico. So it gives us this really well-rounded, kind of diverse view of the film's impact, its intentions, helps us see it from lots of angles.
So what can you expect from this deep dive? Well, get ready for a pretty deep exploration. We're looking at how a fictional dystopian America actually sheds light on very real ethical dilemmas, the kind journalists face all the time. We'll look at the huge human cost of conflict and the unwavering dedication of those who choose to bear witness.
And what I find particularly compelling here is how we're going to look at altruism, not just as some sort of noble, selfless ideal, but maybe as a complex, even paradoxical survival strategy in these extreme situations. It's probably going to challenge some assumptions about what documenting truth really means. Okay, let's dive in. So first, maybe just a quick glance at the film Civil War itself. It's a 2024 dystopian action film. A24 distributed it, written and directed by Alex Garland. It sets up this near-future United States depicting a second American Civil War. You got the totalitarian government on one side and then the Western forces on the other. And that's, interestingly, an alliance of Texas and California.
Right, a slightly unexpected pairing there. And the core story follows this team of journalists. There's the seasoned war photographer Lee Smith, that's Kirsten Dunst, and her colleagues Joel, Jesse, and Sammy. Their journey is basically navigating this torn-apart country to get to Washington, D.C. They want to get a final interview with the president. And the film grounds this fictional conflict in, stark reality pretty quickly. It's quite sobering when you think about the Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ. They reported that as of August 2nd, 2024, at least 113 journalists and media workers had died in war zones. That just underscores the incredible stakes the film is depicting.
Wow, yeah, that statistic really hammers home the danger. It's not just a movie plot device. So to understand how Civil War captures this, maybe let's clarify what we mean by altruism first. And also, how does a film even manage to convey these really complex ideas?
Okay, so altruism, at its heart, it's about selfless action, usually driven by empathy, doing good for others without expecting something back. There's Batson's empathy-altruism theory, which suggests, when we feel or understand someone else's suffering, we're motivated to help, even if it costs us. Robert Cialdini adds a bit more nuance. He distinguishes between reciprocal altruism, where maybe there's an unconscious expectation of a future return, and pure altruism, where there's absolutely no expectation. And our sources point out how this seemingly simple idea becomes this complex, maybe even paradoxical survival tool for the journalists in the film's world.
Okay, so if altruism is about these deep motivations, how does a visual medium like film actually communicate that, beyond just people talking about it?
Yeah, good question. And that's where the semiotics comes in, the approach that our main source uses. Semiotics is basically a way of looking beyond what the film literally shows us. It helps us understand the deeper cultural, the emotional meanings it's conveying, so we can see how, a simple image or an action can carry these powerful, unstated truths. It reveals things about the character's motivations or maybe society's values without needing to spell it all out in dialogue.
Right, it's about reading the signs. Right, that framework helps us understand the 4 specific attitudes of altruism the study identifies in Civil War. Let's start with the first one, how journalists help their colleagues.
Yeah, the film really shows how mutual support isn't just a nice thing to do. It's vital. It's an empathetic survival strategy for journalists in these conflict zones. We see it really vividly when Joel hands Lee a press vest, and especially that moment when Lee gives her own vest to Jesse during a riot. Now, on the surface, okay, it's just protective gear. But the underlying message, the connotation, it's about deep camaraderie, solidarity. Professionals facing shared danger together, it builds this powerful idea, this myth, that mutual assistance driven by empathy and shared identity is fundamental for survival.
That group dynamic makes total sense. When your life is on the line, you rely on each other. But as our sources remind us, the reality of war journalism isn't always quite so straightforward, is it?
That's a really crucial point to bring in, yes. While the film strongly portrays this bond, and it's powerful, critics do note that it can idealize the profession a bit. In the real world, institutional pressures, intense competition, crazy deadlines, those things can unfortunately sometimes get in the way of that kind of solidarity. It paints a maybe more complex picture than the film's focus narrative allows.
Okay. Moving on, the second attitude highlighted is high dedication. This really seems to be the core of the team's whole journey, right? Their relentless drive.
Absolutely. The film shows Lee and her team just pushing through abandoned cars, military checkpoints, deep into a war zone, all to interview the president. What this literally shows, the denotation, is this unwavering commitment, getting information out to the public even when it's life-threatening. The powerful idea it conveys, the myth, is this profound moral obligation to truth-telling. It echoes what renowned war correspondents like Robert Fisk talked about. A journalist's duty is to challenge authority. Or Sebastian Salgado, who aimed to provoke discussion, maybe inspire change with his work.
It's an incredible level of commitment to witness. Does the film maybe overlook some of the real-world complexities behind that kind of dedication?
It arguably does, yeah. While this dedication is portrayed as noble and it is inspiring, the film does tend to gloss over some of the significant economic or institutional pressures journalists actually face. It sort of implicitly calls for better structural protections. It reminds us that an individual's moral commitment really needs backup from their organizations.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. The third attitude, disregarding personal risk. This is where you see the sheer bravery, maybe even recklessness of war journalism shine through.
Yeah, this is shown really starkly with Jessie's actions on the battlefield. She's capturing photos of a fallen soldier while gunfire is going off all around her, seemingly ignoring the immediate danger to herself. The scene clearly illustrates immense bravery, right? A profound commitment to professional responsibility. It's this idea that getting the truth out, getting that information to the public, outweighs personal safety. It positions journalists as those witnesses of history, like Fisk suggested.
It's definitely inspiring to watch that kind of courage on screen. But what's the potential downside, the flip side of portraying that?
Well, while it's inspiring, this kind of portrayal could inadvertently set unrealistic expectations. Like, journalists are supposed to sacrifice their safety, maybe without enough institutional support.
Yeah.
It really highlights the critical need for, legal protections, proper safety training, robust emotional support systems for reporters in these zones. Bravery isn't a substitute for protection. It has to be coupled with it.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, the fourth attitude, concern for mental health. This shows a more human, maybe empathetic side to altruism. It's an incredibly high-stress profession.
This is a really powerful moment in the film. It's shown when Lee comforts Jessie. This is after the traumatic death of their colleague, Sam. Lee reassures Jessie about the risks they all take, helps her sort of cope with the emotional distress. What this literally shows is empathy, a moral commitment to the well-being of colleagues in these high-stress situations. The deeper message, the connotation or myth, is that altruism in journalism isn't just about physical help. It extends to crucial moral and psychological support too, acknowledging the profound human toll of the work.
It's a very powerful moment of human connection in the middle of all that chaos.
Yeah.
But as vital as that kind of peer support is, do our sources suggest it's really enough on its own?
That's a key point raised in the reviews, yeah. While peer support is absolutely vital, crucial even, it's often not sufficient by itself. Research, like that by Mir and Yousaf, really emphasizes this critical need for structured mental health services within media organizations. Things like professional counseling, trauma-informed training, these are essential to address the, frankly, severe psychological toll that repeated trauma takes on journalists. So the film, by showing this moment, subtly underscores this dual responsibility of individuals looking out for each other, yes, but also institutions needing to step up.
Right. So putting all these attitudes together, what does this mean for the film's broader messages? Let's zoom out a bit, talk about some of the bigger themes and interpretations of Civil War. First, there's that really stark theme, the dehumanizing effect of war in journalism itself.
Yeah, the film absolutely immerses you in the grim realities, the emotional toll of war. It's unflinching, and it directly raises the argument that war photography, the act itself, can be inherently dehumanizing, turning real human suffering into just images. We see this arc in the characters. Lee, the veteran, she's become desensitized, while Jessie, the newcomer, her journey shows her becoming increasingly stoic, maybe even disturbingly excited by the combat. It powerfully raises questions about her own retained humanity and the often unseen cost of just bearing witness.
That's a really challenging idea, that the very act of documenting could chip away at your own humanity. Which leads us right into the film's engagement with the value and ethics of journalism. Roger Ebert called this film a thought experiment about journalistic ethics. It really makes you ask, like, what is the highest obligation? Is it just to tell what happened or choose a side?
Exactly. And Lee herself embodies this crisis of faith. She voices it directly, saying something like, every time I survived a war zone and got the photo, I thought I was sending a warning home, don't do this. But here we are. Sammy even notes that Lee has sort of lost her faith in the power of journalism, and that mentor-mentee dynamic between Lee and Jesse is absolutely central to exploring this, Lee's ultimate sacrifice. Some see it as this literal and symbolic passing of the torch, a redemptive act, maybe trying to save Jesse from the same pain she absorbed, but Jesse's choice not to photograph Lee's corpse. Interpretations differ there. Some see it as a sign she's retained her humanity. Others view her continued pursuit of the money shot moments later as a sign of, well, jadedness, a kind of glass half-empty view on whether she learned the right lesson. It really positions journalists not just as passive observers, but as active witnesses, maybe even moral agents, as Salim puts it. Some critics even draw comparisons asking, are journalists becoming soldiers? They aim, they shoot, they attempt to gain position, it blurs the lines.
That's fascinating. Another thing that really sparked discussion was the film's political ambiguity. The nature of the conflict itself, the deliberate choice to avoid clear political reasons for why these factions are fighting, like the Texas and California alliance, that was pretty polarizing. Alex Garland himself said he didn't feel any need to add to the number of films that spell everything out. He wanted the audience to ask the questions.
Yeah, and that ambiguity is seen as both a strength and a weakness, depending on the critic. Some see it as a strength because it highlights, as one commenter put it, the tragedy no matter what the politics. It makes the horror feel universal. Others found it frustrating. They wanted clearer commentary, a more defined political statement about our world. Politico had an interesting take. They noted that this focus on random, chaotic violence by insurgents rather than clear battle lines actually makes the film scarier, and perhaps more realistic in a kind of post-January 6th world. It suggests the film is fundamentally about the chaos, not necessarily the autocracy.
Interesting. And just speaking of how the film portrays all these ideas, Garland's filmmaking style itself is crucial, isn't it, in immersing you?
Oh, absolutely. The film's cinematography is very immersive, lots of handheld shots. And the way it uses still photographs within the film itself, it really draws you into the journalist's perspective, into the brutal realities they're seeing. And this is matched by the sound design. It's incredibly effective. I saw comments online, like on Reddit, calling it the most accurate full combat sound they'd ever heard in a movie. All these elements combine to create this really visceral experience. It pulls you right into the conflict zone alongside them.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Civil War, we've seen how Alex Garland's film, looking through the lens of photojournalism, really dissects altruism into these four compelling attitudes: helping colleagues, showing that high dedication, disregarding personal risk, and also showing concern for mental health.
But crucially, it also unflinchingly shows the ethical tightrope these professionals walk. It's not simple. It reveals the profound, often dehumanizing impact of constantly being exposed to conflict. And it raises some pretty uncomfortable questions about the psychological price of bearing witness.
Yeah, the film really leaves us with these powerful questions about the very purpose and impact of journalism itself. Especially when faced with such overwhelming division and brutality, does documenting reality, no matter how horrific it is, truly serve as that warning Lee hoped for, making people say, don't do this? Or does it, maybe in some ways, contribute to a kind of desensitization, both for the journalist and maybe for us, the audience?
Which leads us to a provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. Think about how the film deliberately holds back on those explicit political answers. It challenges you to wrestle with the why on your own. What does it mean for our own ability to engage with complex realities when a film intentionally leaves so much unsaid? When it prefers to show rather than just explain everything? And maybe what responsibility does that put back on us, the audience, to ask the deeper questions, to try and connect those dots in our own minds?
That's all for this deep dive. We really hope you found these insights as thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring.